I am all the way live right now with Angelica Ross. Oh my God. First of all, your skin. Can we just have a moment for your skin? It is so gorgeous.
Thank you. Thank you. I honestly have been so busy, and luckily, skincare is definitely highly number one for me. But, sometimes when I'm just doing interview after interview, and so my best beauty secret is honestly just keeping my skin clear, because that means that all I have to do is grab my little Lancome powder, a brush, and do one quick swipe over, little concealer under the eyes, and be ready to go. Some lip gloss and be ready to go.
I still would need a whole other kit to get that kind of glow you have right now. But I want to introduce people to who may not know who you are, but I know everyone knows who you are, because last year this time we wrote a story and the lead said Angelica Ross is booked, busy, and blessed.
Yes.
Because a year ago, you had made history as the first trans actress to have two shows. You were in Pose and American Horror Story 1984. And now, fast forward a whole year of being this phenomenal person. You're outspoken advocate for trans rights, and really, honestly, advocating and educating everyone about trans people. But also, you just entered a production deal with
Pigeon Ink. Yes.
Pigeon Ink, where when I saw that they're the company behind Own Ayanna's Fix My Life, I was like, oh, Angela Ross is about to get us just all the way together with our lives.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the programming that you have on deck?
Yeah. We are working on some just amazing things. I had to recently sort of decide to pull back a lot from a lot of the work that I recently did over June and July, Pride Month, even back to from really February, Black History Month, Women's Month, March, that every month there was something. And what I found myself doing was really being pulled everywhere, because when I tap into my little Buddha nature or whatnot, I tap in and they start giving me some things to talk to the people about. And, a lot of people want, had to have sort of that moment where, we're able to bring that like magic, but it's exhausting. Yeah. It has, it's been exhausting to say the least. So what I've been able to do is really take inventory of my platform, especially through my new development deal with Pigeon. And instead of just like being pulled everywhere, I get to sort of streamline a lot of the messages that I want to put out there through both scripted and non-scripted content. So, one of the first shows, we're working on two non-scripted shows actually right now. We're casting one of the shows right now in Atlanta. Is, more reality based and just about a lot of the stars that we don't see that are really behind all the stars, your makeup artists, your hairstylists, your, wardrobe people, and just people who are very influential in Atlanta that are really Atlanta. We're going to be giving them a spotlight and platform. They're not always actors, but these are people who deserve the spotlight and deserve for their sort of lives to be showcased. So we're doing things like that, as well as a non-scripted show that right now we're calling The Turning Point. Am I able to say that? My team is probably going to kill me. But we are one of the first shows up is called The Turning Point. And basically it is a show where I'm really helping to guide the conversation at various turning points of our society and our culture. Everything from business to parenting to just a lot of things. We realize that now is a time that we have to change. It's a turning point in our culture. And so we need to be willing to talk about that and have some clarity around that.
Speaking of turning points, because one thing I think a lot of people don't know, I didn't know you were like a whole entrepreneur, businesswoman before you even got into acting. What was your turning point into, just jumping into the world of acting?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I realized is that even though I may look young, I'm entering into my sort of fourth decade here. I'm turning 40 this year. And so there have been many, Thank you so much. And there have been many turning points that I've had. But I think, my first book and the first really most impactful turning point that I had was when I chose myself. And I think that that's a lesson to reflect to so many different people of what it means and what it looks like to choose yourself, even when sometimes in society it seems like you're last to be chosen.
What can you talk a little bit about what made you choose yourself? Because it seems like the obvious thing to do, I think for women, especially Black women, but it's often the last thing that we do.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many levels I think there's so many levels that I break down to that what it means and looks like to choose yourself, because I believe that it goes in phases. Choosing yourself is really an ongoing choice, moment to moment. There are many times that we have to remind ourselves, I have to choose myself instead of X, Y, or Z in this moment. And so one of the more fundamental parts around choosing yourself is being able to understand that there's so much at work against you in the world, especially in a white supremacist capitalism, patriarchal society. There's so much going against you. So at the very least, your first vow in choosing yourself is to be the one person, if no one else, being the one person who is always in your corner, who is always for you, who is always affirming you, who does not speak negatively about you. And sometimes that's extremely hard because you have to stop the voice inside your head from speaking negatively about you. And what I see that as, obviously, is the first thing that you can try to address and control because it's within your own domain. So there's so many times within society that we get distracted and we focus our energy and our power outside of ourselves instead of really fine tuning into who we are, what our value is, and what our unique powers are that sort of need to be manifested.
It reminds me when you talk about that moment where you have to kind of choose yourself all the time. I remember a really dear friend of mine was in AA, and she was saying that AA, they teach you have to, anytime a drink is put before you, or that moment of whether or not you're going to drink, it's a conversation. It's every conversation. And she said she applied that to dieting because she said it was a conversation she started to have anytime she got, something fatty or whatever is put in front of her. And I think about that when I'm choosing myself. And it's funny, I'm glad you brought that up because it's a constant dialogue with yourself to choose yourself. And I want to go back to something else you mentioned. You said you were exhausted because even now during all this time, and I really look and applaud the work that you're doing in educating so many of us about trans lives, why trans lives matter, Black trans lives matter. But it's got to be tiring because you're talking about it all the time. So what do you do for self-care? What do you do? How important are your girlfriends or your friends and family to kind of rejuvenate you, restore you?
Definitely need a balance of both the work and play. That's pretty much what my focus is right now, is as inspired as I can be, as driven as I can be, as much as of a workaholic that I can be sometimes. I have to pull back and I have to play. So, some of my friends like Amaya Scott, who is someone that just constantly lights a fire underneath me to be a baddie. And so, and she was behind my whole blue hair looking for Interview magazine, and I'm wearing this like tight latex body thing and just all this oily skin. And she just reminds me that as much as I'm, this Buddhist and this, world changer and everything else, I'm equally as much a baddie. And that side of myself needs to be fed. And so it's girls like that.
Like you said, we are savage. We are ratchet.
We are
bad and bougie.
We're everything.
Everything.
We are everything. And I always say one mantra that I want to kind of continue to pass on to our community to understand is that there is no place where Blackness does not exist. We are everything and everywhere. And so once we understand that and can honestly take inventory for all of the Blackness in all of the corners of the world, then we could actually defeat white supremacy and all of this together. But right now, even within our community, there are gradients where we allow certain oppression for some of our Black folks because we somehow have made it up in our moral mindset that they're either asking for it or it is par for course of the life that they've chosen. Instead of understanding, almost even a biblical sense, some things sometimes are taken so literally. I'm a Buddhist, but one thing I do understand that I've learned from Christianity is that we all are books. There's the book of Corey. There's the book of Angelica Ross. There's the book of Janet, the book of Laverne. And there's so many books because God always says, we always learn that the story's not over until God says it is. So why do we keep trying to be the author of other people's stories and telling them what is, instead of watching how God works from point A to point B and giving people the grace to learn and to grow? But we have to learn how to, in our own community, allow for the spectrum of Blackness, as well as be willing to be the gatekeepers and the folks who are accountable so that we don't have to go to outside authorities to handle our inside, issues. If we don't, unlike the way the police and a lot of folks are handling these things, then I think we need to have plans and game plans and community plans to deal with the abusers in our community, both on a physical level, emotional level, and on a spiritual level.
I mean, I know you're booted, but you are anointed.
No, I mean, I trust and believe. Here's the situation. It's just really what it is that all things point to one. India has the music. It all comes down to one, and really all it is it's unfortunate that someone like me grew up in a space that did not have context for me, did not know how to recognize my spiritual power, did not know how to recognize my beauty. And it is thankful that I survived the suicide attempts. It is thankful that I survived the sort of state violence, state sanctioned violence and community of violence that sort of just allowed that I am able to blossom here and really find a way to reflect to the rest of my community that you call it anointing, we call it enlightenment. But we're all reaching towards the same thing that understands that everybody deserves happiness and everybody deserves respect and everybody deserves to be valued.
So they say that the first step opens the door for many opportunities. And you have had so many things going on. But when you reflect back, what would you say was the most pivotal decision you made to make these blessings manifest?
I honestly believe the most pivotal moment in my life was when I found a way to let go of the judgment of myself, to understand that I was doing my best as a Black trans woman who, was kicked out the house at some point or fired from X amount of jobs or lives in the environment that I live in, that has the choices that I'm faced with. I mean, listen, I'm someone that you see me now. You see who I am now. Hopefully, most of you can see me. But many people 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, could not see me, could not see my value, could not see these things. And sometimes it was because I couldn't see it for myself. I had internalized the way that the world sees a Black trans woman. The moment that I sort of accepted my circumstances, and what I mean by that is accepting doesn't mean that you just agree with everything. It's just kind of like, as we say, as Michelle Obama just said the other day, it is what it is. Once I accept, okay, all right, this is what we're dealing with. It is what it is. Now, I don't have to be delusional with myself about the decisions I'm making going forward, because I'm not lying to myself about the circumstance I'm in. I'm very clear about it. which then makes me get to be more clear about how to get out of my situation or how to do it again with grace. Because each time I've spoken about the fact that, I have a background in sex work. It was short-lived and it was a long time ago, but it still was a very valuable time in my life, because at this moment there's being an exchange of value that I'm setting and I'm learning to set and I'm learning to raise at my own kind of pace. Luckily for me, I learned how to raise it really quickly to get paid. You know what I mean? But but that was the first really turning point, is to let go. Everybody else is judging. So why judge yourself? Like, just know that you are doing your best and that your best is going to be different from day to day.
Continuing on that conversation about it is what it is, doing your best. But you had you met Laverne Cox, back when, let's quote unquote, you were a real person, real life. Not this Hollywood glamorous life where you're being photographed everywhere. But she told you that you needed to be undeniable.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story again? And what about you is undeniable?
Yeah. It's something that Laverne has. It's something that I have. It's something that Janet Mock has. It's something that, like, your Raquel Willis's and Ashley Marie Preston's, and this sort of this resilience that we have. And that resilience is part of being undeniable, because the reality is, again, in a world, in a job market that values certain things that I had no access to, I had to communicate to this world my value beyond what they could see. And the only way I could do that is by being undeniable, by people saying, well, that's impossible. And then me doing it. And them not being able to deny that I did that. What did she do? That. You know? So it's one of those things where I was in a job working for a nonprofit that really didn't value me. They were tokenizing. And everything that I suggested, they was a block. I had I just had so much trouble there. And so one of the programs that I created was to connect the homeless population and the population that was newly diagnosed with HIV, these girls that I was working with, connecting them to people like Laverne. So back in the day when we were not really doing all this stuff, we were Skyping Laverne in. And we were talking about the fact of being undeniable, the way she is when she goes into an audition room, the same way that I was when I showed up for that very job. What those girls weren't understanding is that I was driving an hour and a half to work each way while living with my parents, who weren't always that, supportive. So doing what I absolutely must in order to show up to my opportunities and be undeniable. You can't worry about what's happening over here, what they're doing, what the obstacle may look like, how big it is. The only thing you should be focusing on is how can you show up, and doing whatever you can to make sure you show up at your best.
I love that. So just for clarity, was when Laverne was on Orange is the New Black, or is this before?
When this moment was around the time when Laverne was, I believe she was on Orange is the New Black. It might have been a little bit before that time.
Okay. I just want to have a timestamp.
Yeah.
You're dedicated to staying vocal about trans rights. But do you ever have a moment where you're tired of telling people some very basic things? And I say this to say, because when you talk about Janet Mock, I remember we interviewed her for our podcast, and we were talking with her as she was promoting her second book. And I made the misjudgment of asking her to sort of break down the different names, like cis versus, trans, or, whatever. And she was gracious, but she said, that was in my first book. I've talked about that already. We're going to move on this. We're going to elevate the conversation.
Right.
And I'm wondering, how do you feel about that? Is there, going back to that exhaustion, is it exhausting having to continually educate with this increasing visibility, does it disappoint you that you have to tell people those sort of the same things?
It does get extremely exhausting sometimes. And more so exhausting because it feels repetitive. So I feel like I'm repeating myself. And as someone who runs a company and is a boss, that is the last thing I like to do is repeat myself.
As per my last email.
As per my last email, text, task that I assigned, all of that, So I don't usually like repeating myself. However, this is where I have always to remind myself of my Buddhist vow. And a part of my Buddhist vow, really at the core of that, is using the technique of dialogue. And dialogue is our main avenue for change as Buddhists. And so what I know is that I'm always invited into conversations that I'm supposed to be in. And it's just, I align myself with the universe in a way that, it's exhausting. Sometimes I'm in first class, flying in first class, back before COVID, flying in first class, enjoying the fruits of my very hard work.
Those warm nuts and champagne?
Listen, enjoying it in the limo on the way to the airport, just enjoying the fruits of the labor, right? But, it just might happen to be a situation where my limo driver is an older white woman. That's nice to see. Thank you. But she's a Trump supporter and she's got certain tones in the things she's saying. Ooh. And I got about 45 minutes to get to the airport. So do I, one, roll up the partition, please? Or do I two, welcome this moment and this conversation? Yeah. By the time I got to the airport, the woman driver stepped out of the car crying, gave me a hug, and said thank you. And it really was because, a lot of these Trump supporters, it's hard because they don't recognize their privilege to be that ignorant. Just as many folks within our, cis heteronormative community don't sometimes recognize their privilege to be that ignorant. But really at the basis of it all, as a Buddhist, what I see is fear. I see a lot of fear of the world that they knew changing before their eyes and them feeling like they're losing context in that world. And so this woman who lost her husband, lost certain things, their business or certain things that they had in this world that white people kind of controlled and ran or whatever the case is, she was feeling very afraid and lost and all kinds of things and felt like, well, I just drive this limo and I'm just doing these things and we're happy. And I said to her, you need to realize how much your life, still at 60, you have so much to offer as a 6-year-old woman who is a widow, who's lost her husband, who is now running her own business, driving a limousine. You could be inspiring so many other women. And it was like literally from this moment that she had this like light bulb moment and realized, because she told me, she said to me, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I've been feeling suicidal, thinking about ending my life because I don't have my husband anymore. These are the type of conversations that I roll up on when I allow for my Buddha nature to sort of do its thing in the space, instead of trying to protect the privilege I've gained in this body to be able to shut it off, to close it off. So many people have that privilege. And I, as a Black trans woman, sometimes, need to indulge in that privilege, Yeah. But at the same time, I can't get lost in the fact that that's not why I'm here, to accumulate privileges. That's not a purpose-driven life, accumulating titles and things. I'm here to move us forward. I'm here to create more peace and healing.
As you're saying this, I'm thinking, I just had a thought, and this also speaks to why you glow, why you're glowing. Why I know you said you keep your skin clean and, but this speaks to that inner light that you have why people are gravitating and love hearing you. And I'm so thankful that you took time out of your day to speak with Essence. And I'm even taking this in personally. So thank you for sharing this, because I think there's something. How long have you been a Buddhist? And is your Buddhist like a Tina Turner Buddhist?
Absolutely, exactly, actually. I chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and I've been chanting for my Buddhist birthday. It'll be 10 years that I've taken the practice seriously.
Happy birthday.
But, you know, one thing to offer to our Black community, honestly, is we've got to start to open our minds a little bit and to understand sort of the roots and histories of religion, and in ways religion has not served the people. And we have to get more vigilant around religion and spirituality serving the people. And what that looks like is empowering the people, not institutions and buildings. And so what you saw on What's Love Got to Do With It with Tina Turner is someone who was so caught up and distracted and off purpose that they couldn't even put their lipstick on straight in the mirror. And she was losing her wits, to the point when it was introduced to a tool like Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, which is really us chanting to the chanting is a process of polishing a mirror so that you can see yourself and your circumstances clearly, so that you can say, you know what? I don't need anything but my name. I'm that powerful. I don't need anything but my name, and I'm willing to fight for my life. That is the essence that's in me, is that I'm willing to fight. As a Black trans woman, I don't need anything, because I know how valuable I am. I will attract, just on my name, Miss Ross, will stand value. And that, no wig, no fancy gowns, no pretty gowns, just me and some light.
And that swipe of Lancome. Yes. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you, Angelica.
Thank you.
And now I'm realizing your name is like Angel, like just the full 360 of it all. Oh my God. This has been such a blessing to talk to you, and we'll be seeing you on the OWN show and your new OWN show as it, well, we don't know if if they
pick it up, it's one of these things where, because, Pigeon and Paul Harrison at Pigeon, he's the Sweetie Pies. He also has done, Eon to Fix My Life. So OWN is definitely excited to see what we're working on. I hope we get on too, but we will see.
We'll see. But Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.